Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
It's never been an issue with me. Good evening. My name is Barton Samuel Kyle. I was born in Elizabeth Township 200 years ago this year. My father, Samuel Thomas Kyle, was an early minister and educator here in Miami County. The Kyle family immigrated to the New World in the early 1700s. My grandfather fought in the Revolution. My father fought in the War of 1812. I was 11 years old in 1836 when my father died, and I was raised to adulthood by my older brother Thomas B. Kyle. My brother Thomas was very active in local politics, and I too was drawn to public service. At the age of 20, I was the deputy auditor of Miami County. I was also active in the Troy Lyceum organization, where we held regular public debates on various topics of interest. And the skills I gained there served me well when I became active in the Troy Literary Association. By 1850, I was living in the Hatfield House, working as a clerk at Kyle and Brothers Bookstore, which was located downtown on Market Street. The family-operated business served Troy for well over 10 years. In the fall of that year, I was appointed deputy marshal in charge not with enforcing the law, but rather taking care of the 1850 census in the eastern townships of Miami County. And what a better situation could there be for a young politician than to go door to door meeting potential voters. In my personal life, I married Martha Jane McNabb in 1851, and we were blessed with 4 children. My brother Thomas died in 1854, and my involvement in the bookstore business intensified. At that same time, I was a member of the Troy Board of Education, the Troy Temperance Committee, the Miami County Agricultural Society, the Masonic Lodge, and served as Concord Township trustee. In the presidential election of 1856, I threw my support behind the newly formed Republican Party and its standard-bearer, John C. Fremont. New Western territories were about to enter the Union, and it was Fremont's position that slavery should not be allowed in those territories. While James Buchanan won the presidential election, the slavery issue was not dealt with, and it was evident that a national crisis was on the horizon. 1858, I was elected clerk of the Common Pleas Court of Miami County and served in that capacity until my country's needs pulled me away. By 1860, my life, both personal and business, was quite successful. Martha and I lived in a large home on Franklin Street with our children, Martha's mother. We had several boarders, 2 servants. And that same year, I was elected president of the school board. In 1860, I again supported the Republican Party, and I went to Chicago to represent Troy and Miami County. Abraham Lincoln's election as President of the United States was seen by many Southerners as a threat to their way of life. Between December of 1860 and June of 1861, 11 states left the Union and formed a separate government. For several months after Mr. Lincoln's inauguration, there was a quiet uneasiness, but little fighting. This ended with the firing on Fort Sumter in April. Most folks around here felt that the South would be beaten in a short period of time, but the Union defeat at Manassas in July of 1861 proved us wrong. Regiments with 3-year enlistments began to form all over the North. I began my efforts to organize the 71st Ohio Volunteer Infantry around September of 1861. I was offered command of the regiment by the governor, but given that my only previous military experience was with the Lafayette Blues, I declined. Instead, I was named Lieutenant Colonel of the regiment. The Miami County Fairgrounds in Troy was temporarily renamed Camp Todd, was chosen as a training camp given its location near the railroad and the canal. Volunteers arrived in groups all through the fall of 1861 until we had 10 companies with roughly 1,000 officers and men. 3 or 4 of the companies were made up of Miami County boys, so I knew a lot of the men that were under me at that time. I was in charge of the camp until January of 1862 when Rodney Mason, the regiment's colonel, arrived from Columbus. He had been a lieutenant colonel with the 2nd Ohio Volunteer Infantry in Manassas, and more recently, he was the assistant adjutant general of Ohio. We received our regimental flag from the good citizens of Troy on February 15th, 1862. Shortly thereafter, we boarded a train to Cincinnati and then 2 steamboats for a 3-day trip to Paducah, Kentucky. In Paducah, we joined 3 other regiments and formed 2nd Brigade, 5th Division of Grant's Army of the Tennessee. Our brigade commander was Colonel Stewart from Illinois, while our division commander was another Ohio man, William Tecumseh Sherman. After 3 weeks in Paducah, we again boarded boats and headed up the Tennessee River on a 13-day trip, which ended at Pittsburgh Landing, about 20 miles from the Mississippi border. This boat ride was very rough on the boys, and nearly 1/3 of the regiment was sick by the time we arrived. Our army of roughly 35,000 men were camped in the fields and forests west and south of Pittsburgh Landing. Our brigade was on the extreme left of the army, and we were separated by 2 miles from the rest of the 5th Division headquarters, being located near a little church called Shiloh. We had been assured that there were no Confederates in our immediate area, but there had been frequent run-ins with Confederate patrols during the encampment, and I was concerned about our exposed position, the regiment's overall health, and our lack of training with the arms that we had only recently received. We actually left Troy with only about half of the rifles that we should have had. Early on Sunday, April 6th, we began to hear musket fire to the west of our location, roughly where our division headquarters was located. We sent our sick up the road to Pittsburgh Landing before the fight, which reduced our available men to 500, roughly half of what we left Troy with 2 months earlier. Our orders were to remain in place, and we did so until late morning when both the Confederate infantry and artillery appeared on the low hills to our front. The fight began with the rest of our brigade on our left, and we had no support on our right. As the Confederates began to advance, we began to retreat to a less exposed position. Behind our camps, as you parallel the Tennessee River, the ground becomes jagged, with dry washes, brush, and sharp ravines. Those ravines were filled with water, as it had been a very rainy spring. As the shooting intensified, it was not possible to think about anything but the enemy in your front. You simply fire, reload, and fire again. We lost contact with Colonel Mason. We lost contact with the rest of the brigade. And then finally, we lost contact with parts of our own regiment. I was leading a group of men, and we knew there were other groups near us fighting close by, but they were not always in view. And it was in that area, while directing our fire into the enemy, that I was cut down. I was left laying where I fell, but Newt Harder and Bill McClure returned with several volunteers and carried me through the fire to an ambulance, which transported me to a hospital boat where I departed this life later that day. I was 1 day short of my 37th birthday. News of my death reached Troy in 3 or 4 days, and City Council dispatched Dr. Harder, Benjamin Coolidge, and Solomon Drury to return my mortal remains to Troy. My funeral was well attended, as Mayor Pettit had requested that all businesses close at noon on the 18th and remain closed for the remainder of the day. From my home on Franklin Street, I was taken to the Methodist Episcopal Church, where I lay in state before the service. It was a wet, dreary day, but the church was filled to capacity. Many outside straining to hear the prayers that were being offered. At the appointed hour, a long procession began from the church across the river into this place. Including in the cortege were the 42nd OVI Band, the Rawson Riflemen, Lafayette Blues, ex-Governor Dennison, and the Oddfellows of Masonic Lodges. And here on this hill, the Masonic grave ceremony was read. The Lafayette Blues fired a farewell volley, and the mourners returned to their lives. Many lamented what I might have accomplished had I survived the war. I prefer to believe that my life, while short, was full. I was a husband, father, public servant, and soldier, and I left this world defending all of the things that were important to me. My oldest son, Walter M. Kyle, served as postmaster and deputy sheriff for Miami County. My youngest son, Barton Thomas Kyle, became an attorney, mayor of Troy, and two-time United States congressman. My grandson, Barton Kyle Yount Sr., graduated West Point in 1907, and over a 39-year career rose to the rank of lieutenant general. My great-grandson, Colonel Barton Kyle Yount Jr., also graduated from West Point and flew 30 B-29 missions over Japan. Some might say that these men contributed or continued my legacy, but I prefer to think that they established their own legacies. I appreciate your attention and thank you for visiting with me today.